Hello. So I thought I would just jump on and do a video. I am very much coming from my own experiment in this. I don't know how it will play out for other manifesting generators, but for myself, goal setting is something that needs to be maintained with fluidity. I don't have, and I made this shift many, many years ago, I don't have a to-do list anymore. I have a list of options. And what that allows me to do is to create the list, allow myself to initiate where potentially I want to go, but allow that space for me to respond in the moment. Is this right for me right now? And I think for manifesting generators, for myself, I don't know whether it broadens out or whether it's just my own experience, that freedom is essential. Based on the reading that I've done, pure generators are going to follow through no matter what. So what they make a commitment to, they need to follow through on to fulfill their strategy and to live up to it. Whereas as manifesting generators, while we need follow through in some areas, it's okay for us to change our mind. I think it was called The Gap of Truth, or That Moment of Truth, in one of the books that I read. And forgive me, I've read 5 or 6 in the last 2 weeks around these topics. Until we've taken action, we're not sure if that's where we want to play. Now, what's beneficial for me, at least, and I'm curious, please pop in the comments whether you resonate or not, is I'm really open to initiating. There's rarely any hesitation for me in diving into something new. Should I play with this? Once I get into it, I will have an experience, and that experience will then shape future experiences. So for example, my experience of human design, the very first reading that I had of my design, the reader opened the session by saying, you have fixed ideas, you're not willing to have your mind changed, you're stuck, and I don't know why we're having this call. Now, I did find where in my chart that showed up, and I giggled at it, but it closed me off initially. So my gut response to the reader was, I don't want to play with you. And I instantly had that gut response as she opened the session that way, as I think most people would. And I sat with it, and about 5 minutes into the conversation, or 10 minutes, I don't know, I kind of went numb and shut down. And ironically, her saying that I was closed off made me very closed off. Whereas normally I'm quite open, I'm quite receptive. There are some things where I have fixed ideas and I have fixed instincts. I have a defined instinct center, spleen center. In that moment, though, I closed off to her, my inner, about 10 minutes in. Allow me to lose track of my thoughts and come back. About 10 minutes into the session, I asked, is this fixed? Is this never going to change? Am I stuck with this pattern forever? And her answer was a very definitive yes, which I understand now to be accurate, but her delivery method of it really sucked. So my understanding of human design is, yes, it's going to be fixed. Our chart's not changing. Our birth date, our soul implantation date, neither of them are changing. None of that's shifting for our entire life. It's going to stay the same. What does shift quite dramatically, though, is our relationship with the various parts of ourselves, with what's defined, what's undefined, what's open. All of those pieces don't change. Our relationship with them can change quite dramatically. And so with the awareness of how closed off to things I can be, I can navigate that, and I can circumnavigate that, and I can play with that, and I can change my relationship with that. Sometimes my strong opinions are my greatest gift. Sometimes they are my biggest obstacle that I have to overcome. Depending on the circumstances, depending on the context, depending on my mood, all of that comes into play. What happened, though, was I wrote off human design in that moment. And it wasn't until recently where I had several people over a course of a couple of months really push is the wrong word, but really inform and invite me to explore human design again. And while I had that awful experience, what I was able to do was just kind of sit into, okay, I feel like this is an opportunity for me to respond. It feels like potentially it could be a good fit. So that's me tapping into that sacral response, that gut response. There's possibilities here, but it's not a clear yes or no. And I find for me, that's often the case. For me, I often, and this possibly comes down to my sense, which is taste, I often have a moment of maybe. Now, the only way to move from maybe to a clear yes or no is for me to take action, for me to initiate something, for me to do something. So I'll get that maybe response. And sometimes I'll even get like a really clear yes or no response. And then I'll take an action aligned with the response that I've got and discover after I've had a taste of following through on that choice that it's not a match. And so in terms of goal setting, we need to know how we operate. So one of the things that I've been teaching for years in my goal setting workshops, Design Your Success, is to check into the here and now, E-R-E, E-R-E. So the apostrophe E-R-E, I'm like, there's an apostrophe there somewhere. So the here, and the reason it's E-R-E rather than here is because it's an acronym and I love acronyms. But check in with the energy, the relationship, and the effort that you're currently putting in the area. And I've got a whole geeky scoreboard that I encourage people to go through, and then check in how that compares to our willingness to act. So if the here and now isn't aligned with us taking action, generally speaking, it's really difficult to motivate ourselves. And I've seen that across the board for a human thing. I don't know if it's a manifesting generator thing. I don't know if it's projection from my own style or whether that is just a human thing. If what we're currently doing doesn't have some alignment, and so the here and now breaks down into our current beliefs, the attributes we believe we have access to, the standards, the expectations, and the decisions that we're making. And so looking at that allows me to assess, based on my current experience, how hard is it going to be for me to maintain the momentum in this? And I won't initiate something too big for myself anymore. So I check in with, is this aligned with where I'm at currently? What's it going to take for me to act? And how big a stretch is that going to be? And sometimes I'll take on one challenging goal. I might put my effort and my energy into challenging a belief or challenging an attribute that I'm not familiar with. So when I went and learned how to do stand-up comedy, I was challenging a belief and an attribute. I didn't think I had humor as an attribute. And I had a long-standing belief that I wasn't funny, that had been embedded from when I was little. But I started small. And so allowing myself to build up to that. And then I went and once I was at a level of maybe I can do this, which was after I'd done a minute in front of a very, very friendly, warm, loving, receptive audience. Then I went and I signed up to comedy school and I did a performance, 5-minute performance in front of a paid audience that didn't know me at all. And so there was not that there was no love or reciprocity in that moment, but I actually had to earn their affection and be funny to get their affection. And my worst nightmare came true in that moment. And I pushed past it and broke that belief and broke that attribute and now bring it into my everyday stuff. And I now believe I'm hilarious and I'm okay with that. And I'm less concerned about getting the validation from others. I'm less concerned about whether other people think that I'm funny or not. In terms of goal setting, though, I think being able to allow ourselves to have that gut yes or no. So give ourselves something to respond to, which is what my self-reflection questions are aimed to do in the Design Your Success process. I didn't realize that until recently, but it's the get something down on paper, give ourselves something to respond to. Then if you get the yes from that, and I do it all in gut feel. I've got this geeky, and I love the geeky spreadsheet. I love the geeky calculations. But at the end of the day, I look and I go, I want this one and this one and this one. And the numbers have very little to do with it, though I'm not going to remove that from my process because I love it. I love geeking out in that way. I have to look at which gate that is for me. Once I have had that gut response, it's like, this is what I want to play with. Then I allow myself to initiate an action in that space and I allow myself to move forward. So I'm responding to that initial choice point. Then I allow myself to initiate. And then I come back to respond to what happens after I initiate it. So, for example, setting a long-term goal generally doesn't work for me because I'm constantly going between this respond, initiate, respond. Whereas from my understanding, the generator will have that response and follow through, more likely to completion. And I'm sure there are generators out there that have conditioning that's introduced procrastination and all of those kinds of things. My point, though, is that generally they'll follow through. Generally, they'll want to follow through. Whereas I'm more than content to change my mind. Now, I don't change my mind at everything, and I don't think I should drop everything. If we're following our sacral decision-making process, and I imagine there are emotional manifestor generators out there, I have no idea what that looks like. For me, I have a sacral authority. If I'm following my sacral authority, then chances are I will initiate something and then I will respond again, but I'll continue flowing down the same path. So, for example, writing my book was a continual series of, okay, someone said you should write a book. And I checked in, I'm like, yep, that sounds like a great idea. I initiated, and then there was a continual ebb and flow of, okay, this way doesn't feel very good for me anymore. I still want to write the book, but I've got to find a different path. I've got to do it my own way, which is my gate 26, success on my terms. I'm going to write the book my way. And I do this with everything. I transform it and transmute it into my own methodology. I listen to stories, I turn them into my own wisdom, all of that coming to play. So we need to pay attention to our own, it's not just the overall type, it's our own gates as well for goal setting. But for me, very fluid goal setting is the strategy that works. So I might have a long-term write a book strategy. Is this strategy, this method aligned for me to achieve it the way that I want? And if I get a no to that, okay, then I'll check in. Okay, is writing a book still something I want to do? Yes, hell yes. Okay, now I've got to initiate another way. It's like I tried that way, it didn't work. Now I'm going to initiate another way. And coaches, mentors, trainers, educators, teachers hate that because they want to, you said yes to doing it this way, continue, maintain that momentum. And I imagine that that's the majority generator population coming to life, trying to shut that down in me. I won't abide with that anymore. But in terms of goals, okay, what's the big picture? So I want to write a book. Is this the strategy for it? And I find this is the piece where most people bail, is that they've got a strategy that's not working for them. And by strategy in this, I mean method, step-by-step process, rather than the strategy that we talk about in human design. But there's a method or a process that's not working. And what generators often will do, and I think this is how sometimes they burn themselves out, is they'll push through with that same process without listening to that gut response. But as manifesting generators, we've got to be even more aware of it and start to, in that moment of this process isn't working for me, we get to initiate another process. We get to initiate another experiment and then respond to that and see if there's a yes, this is aligned, I want to keep doing this, or there's a no. And keep checking back in. Is this goal still aligned? So one of the biggest obstacles that society teaches is that once you set a goal, you have to follow through on it or you're a failure, which is bullshit, particularly for the manifesting generators. It is that manifesting side of us. So the manifestors initiate and let other people do the work. And I think sometimes we need to be aware, okay, well, we initiated this. If that process is going to be used, someone else might need to do it. If I'm going to continue doing it, I need to come back into my sacral authority. I need to come back into the generator side of me and follow through on it in a way that's aligned, or let it go. And it's okay to let them go. And so I'll sit down, I'll do a brainstorm. And I've been rather inconsistent with this lately. I need to check in with what is it that's had me shift. But normally I would sit down, I'd do a brainstorm of options, and then I respond to that list. So I create the list of options, and then I allow myself to respond to the list. But the response isn't, these are all the things. So as I'm exploring, I'm simply exploring. I'm allowing the ideas to wash through me, and then I respond to my own ideas. So I have the idea, I put it on paper, and then I allow myself to respond to that idea in the moment. And sometimes I'll write, I rarely do them the night before these days, because I really struggled with that, and I found there was too much of a disconnect. But I do them in the morning, and by lunchtime, generally I've moved on to something else. I'm okay with that. And so I think becoming okay with whatever our own experiment reveals for us is really key. I hope you got some value from this. I will do another video at some point on the design elements and the pieces that I use in that. But for now, I just want to talk through my experiment and share my story. I hope something in there either landed or sparked something and you were able to respond with it and go, no, that's never going to work for me. That's okay. I'm open to those responses. It'll either align or it won't, or maybe you're not sure and you need to put it into action and initiate a little bit and then respond to the initiation. However you choose to play it out is up to you. Let me know in the comments. What did you love? What did you learn? What did you hate? What aligned? What was useful? What was not useful? And I look forward to responding to those comments probably with another video. I am delighted that you're watching this, and enjoy going forth and setting goals your way and in your time. Bye.